During your journey through Terra, you will explore dangerous dungeons, hunt epic loot, and craft legendary weapons. But to do so, you must first overcome the most dangerous bosses of all the land. The Stone Titan of the Lightless Arbor, Julra the Chronomancer in the Temporal Sanctum, Kremerus of the Soulfire Bastion. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Today, we discuss Haruspex Orian, your first boss encounter in Terra. Commanding his avian army, Haruspex Orian will test your might with fire and steel. You will be pushed to your limits before obtaining the Epoch just beyond your grasp. But before we get to the boss himself, let's discuss some of the basic mechanics of Last Epoch. To make your way through the game, you'll have to rely on both mana and life to cast your skills and keep yourself healthy. Your base mana regeneration is 8. You can't scale the base, but you can build increased mana regeneration. Your base health regeneration at the beginning of the game is 6 life per second. At level 100, this goes to 20 life per second. Now sometimes, the skills that we have access to don't quite scale well in the very beginning of the game. When it comes to that, nothing quite compares to the old faithful two-handed melee weapon. Especially at levels 1, 2, or 3, consider using a two-handed melee weapon if your skills don't quite have the damage or area to keep up. Remember, to compare DPS, just equip a weapon and then mouse over your tooltip in the bottom middle of your screen. Then equip a new weapon and compare again. Regardless of what skill you're playing, you'll want to consider finding affixes for chance to apply an ailment on hit. Things like bleed, ignite, or even poison. Ailments have their own base damages in Last Epoch, separate from your initial hit and from your skills. As a quick note, this is distinct from how Path of Exile handles ailments. Let's talk about preparing for the big boss fight. In the first zone, you will kill enough monsters to hit level 2. When you walk into town, consider opening the treasure box just beyond the stash. Oftentimes, 1 or 2 blue items here can be vendored in order to purchase a two-handed melee weapon. Just outside of town, you'll want to hit level 3. Prioritize killing the Skullen Mages, who cast Lightning Blast at you. These give you substantially more XP than normal monsters do. Nearly 10 times as much experience as a normal Skullen monster, and about 3 times more experience than the bears in this zone. Pathing around the bottom side of this map will run you into at least 2 packs of these Skullen Mages, and you'll often also pass by a shrine, maybe haste or maybe gold. Killing just 2 packs of these Skullen Mages, along with some other monsters along the way, will set you on a good track to be level 4 before you fight the Haruspex Orian. To be extra safe, you could path to all 4 packs of Skullen Mages. This will set you on track to be level 5 by the time you fight the Haruspex Orian. Once you're in the 3rd combat zone of the game, you'll hit level 4. If you spec a skill, as soon as you become level 4, you will have a 2nd skill point by the time you hit level 5. But for the purposes of this walkthrough, level 5 is not mandatory for killing the Haruspex Orian boss. And now for the boss fight, the Haruspex Orian. You'll have to be careful. This boss can do a surprising amount of damage because of his hidden modifiers. Plus 50% more spell damage, plus 40% more generic damage, and plus 12 melee fire damage. His large AoE flame burst ability, although scary at first sight, is actually a slight reprieve. It looks mighty, however, this skill is unable to crit. Consider tanking this ability in order to maintain your DPS. Speaking of crit, his basic melee attack, which he uses as a large thrust toward your character, will never take you off guard. It also cannot crit you. Though be warned, you can die during this fight. Unless you're a mechanical mastermind who can dodge every single ability, you'll need to recover life during the fight. And since you likely won't have much else in terms of leech or recovery, you'll have to rely on the old faithful, potions. Potions do scale based on your own character level, but they don't recover a percentage of your maximum life. Potions recover 50 health plus 5 times your character level. So at character level 4, these potions recover 70 life. But at level 5, they recover 75 life, which is a 7% increase in total health recovered. Don't have any potions for the fight? Take a deep breath. Just from hitting bosses, you'll drop more potions. By hitting the boss more often, you'll generate 2, 3, or maybe even 4 potions during this fight. It's important to note, you do drop more potions while you are not holding your maximum number of potions. And remember, even if you get low on health, you have one more trick up your sleeve: endurance. Endurance is almost like one-shot protection. Though not literally, it's important to note that endurance does mitigate damage if the beginning of that damage starts above your endurance threshold and the end of that damage would be under your endurance threshold. Because your health regen is a flat amount, and your endurance threshold gives you damage mitigation when you're low on health, you can actually use this to your advantage in some scenarios. For the very first pack of monsters in the game, even in hardcore, don't worry about AFKing or going to get a cup of coffee. You actually can't die to that monster. And now look at you. You know more about potion mechanics, you understand endurance, you know which abilities you can and can't tank, and you know which abilities can and cannot crit you. By pathing appropriately, hitting level 4, specializing in a skill, and prioritizing high DPS affixes on your weapon, like chance to apply an ailment on hit, you will have all the tools you need in order to overcome the first difficult boss in Last Epoch, the Haruspex Orian. Remember, if you like this kind of content on YouTube, be sure to follow for the next episode where we discuss strategies for taking down the next monster in the game, the Void Despair.